Just put a blog post up about the history of Alderman Farms, as you were, or the heritage that's behind our little place. And so I thought I'd do a little quick video to sort of as a supplement to give a little additional information. The wind's blowing real badly here, so I hope it doesn't come through on the film too much. Here lies my great-great-grandfather, Enoch Alderman. As you can see there, he was born in 1801. He's in the family cemetery here on the property. Actually, it's not our property anymore. I'll explain that in a minute. But 1801 was the first year of Thomas Jefferson's presidency, 25 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. This kind of puts it in perspective, you know. Enoch is the patriarch that came here from, I believe, North Carolina. I'm not sure. I should have gotten the notes. My oldest son, Cameron, has done quite a bit of research, taking us all the way back to Connecticut in the 1600s. But I do know, I can't remember for sure the last stop before they ended up here. But Enoch is the one who landed here in Lincoln County, Mississippi. Great-great-granddad. Great-grandfather, William Thomas W.T. Alderman, son of Enoch. I mentioned a moment ago that it's not really our property anymore. That's because sometime in the late 1800s, and then again in 1913, I'll explain that too, W.T. set aside an acre for the Alderman family cemetery. And what he did was he deeded it to the Alderman family cemetery. So that way he knew that it could never be sold. The reason he had to do it again in 1913 is because the courthouse burned and all the records were lost. So they redid that in 1913, and I've actually got that deed. I should probably have it in my hand, but I don't. So W.T. Alderman, my dad, Ralph Thomas Alderman, his grandson, actually remembers him when he was a little child. One of his favorite memories is he said he would sit with a tiny little pencil, basically expounding on the scriptures by candlelight, and he had the palsy, as they call it, so badly that he had the tiny pencil in his right hand, and he would have to steady his right hand by holding it with his left hand, steadying his right hand with his other hand while he was writing, so it could be made out. Sadly, or I guess I should say, I was excited to learn that many of those writings of his exist in a trunk somewhere. But the sad news is nobody can find it. We don't know who has it or had it last, but what would I give to have a look at that, huh? W.T. married Frances Jane, I think it was Jane, Laird. This is her tombstone, and by that marriage, the southern section of land that I mentioned in the blog post came into the family. So we had two sections. Our family controlled, or had partial control at least, of two sections of land at one time. And one of the 80 acres and a house that's also mentioned in the blog post comes from that southern section of land. That's the house that my dad grew up in. He was born in a house back in the woods here, but they moved when he was just a tot, and that house burned to the ground when he was 10. But I have cousins that still live in the house that my dad grew up in, on Alderman Lane, as a matter of fact. And that was part of the southern section that came into the family through the Lairds when W.T. Alderman married Frances. Several of W.T. and Frances's children were born here, including little Luther. He was just a child. Here's a picture of the family. You can tell which one that William T. is, and Frances also. Luther, the little child I mentioned a moment ago, is the little fellow right in the middle in the white shirt. He died not long after this picture was taken. In fact, here's his headstone. Born February 23rd, 1896, died December 12th, 1901, 5 years old. And before they lost little Luther, actually before little Luther was born, they lost an infant, I assume was stillborn. Those were tough days. Tough days. We're blessed to be living in the days that we live now. And here lies Grandma and Grandpa. I never met them. Actually, my grandmother did. She died in 1976, but I never met my grandfather, John Wesley Alderman, who's one of the children of William Thomas. In fact, let's go back to that picture. This is him as a young fellow, right here. And even though this is the Alderman family cemetery, there are actually a couple of folks scattered throughout here in the cemetery that are no relation to us, but that they attended a little church that's right around the corner on another section of property that used to belong to us. I don't know if it was at the same time or not, but William Thomas, W.T. Alderman, who set out the acre for this cemetery, also set out 3 acres for a little church, and unrelated necessarily to the family. And so there was some confusion apparently from time to time down through the years, and people thought that this was the burial place for church members there. Well, it wasn't supposed to be, but what you gonna do, dig them up and throw them out? We can't do that. And so all these years later, I reckon old Enoch would be pleased to know that his great-great-grandson and great-great-great-grandchildren are living on the place that where he plopped down so many years ago. We sure are thankful that he stopped here, and we're grateful to God for the acreage that we have and the resources and how beautiful it is. And it means a lot to us, and I'm very thankful that my kids appreciate the history and appreciate the land itself. So that makes me feel good that once I'm planted in a hole here, generations later, maybe somebody will be standing over my tombstone telling my story too.